I'm Alexei. I just checked. You've written over 100 research papers and 5 books. So I guess you've reviewed well over 1,000 papers. So my question is, how do you review research papers and identify the truly outstanding papers? So my question is, how do you review research papers and identify the truly outstanding papers?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. This is a very important topic that you will confront when you are writing a paper on any subject. Let me explain. Before I go on, let me just blow my own trumpet a little bit more. Actually, I have written 150 papers and I have written a dozen books. Not all of them are by myself. I have co-authored with them. I have edited some volume where I have chapters, but those are the facts on the ground. Anyway, so let me go back to research paper on any subject. How do you know what are the outstanding papers? The question is, why do you want to know? If you're trying to figure out what to read, then typically the best scientific papers are not written in their best ways. The reason is that a lot of path-breaking papers are written where the authors themselves or the subject itself is rather at a developmental stage, and therefore all the ideas are floating around in a flux, and therefore they are not at all well formed for you to actually bite into it. They are generally very, very hard. They go around talking about all sorts of things. Most of it is not relevant at all. So when you do that sort of thing, it is not a good idea to start with the most prominent or most famous papers. It's better to look at what the latest papers are on that subject. And it should be written by some reputable authority, that is a person who's well known in that field, and also from a reputable university. Typically, you know the big name universities, and they are the places to go. And if you want to actually know something about a specific subject on a specific topic, or you have a question, you can often ask these people about their opinion. Sometimes they may not reply, but sometimes they do. And that can create an open communication with the authorities in the field. Avoid all the papers from the so-called open access journals. They are usually not of very good quality. So relying on those papers can take you to the wrong direction very, very easily. My students, when they were doing thesis with me, have directed many undergraduate theses and many masters and some PhD theses as well. Regardless of what the level was, usually the student asks, so how do I go about writing my thesis? Usually I tell them the same thing. I'll say, okay, let's suppose you want to study this particular phenomenon. Whatever it is, the first thing that it will have is to have an introduction, then a literature review, then data, methods, results, and conclusion. Now here's the thing. You do not write the introduction first. You write the introduction last, after you have really reached your proper conclusions. Once you do that, then it is easy to write the introduction. So what do you write first? I would suggest you start with the literature review. What kind of things people have done in that area over the last few years. And that will give you a pretty good idea as to where you want or what kinds of things you want to study that other people have either neglected or have not said enough that can be said. Of course, you have to identify a source of data sets, and that can also be a challenge depending on what you're trying to do. Methods, typically methods are standard. Any kind of data analysis has to have standard data analysis techniques like calculating univariate stuff, calculating multivariate stuff, calculating things using time series methods. Now there are more advanced methods or more recent methods, things like artificial intelligence or some kind of methods which gives you alternatives to time series data analysis. Now, essentially, they boil down to the same sort of thing. So it's not really a completely different method of analyzing the data, but having that data is important. Once you analyze the data, obviously, you have to have the results very clearly spelled out and what kind of conclusions you can draw. And as I keep telling the students, you don't need to fill them out sequentially. You can start with the data, you can start with the methods, you can start with the literature review, whatever is convenient at that moment. You can be doing 2, 3, 4 different areas at the same time. That's fine too. Just make sure that it flows from introduction to the conclusion. If it doesn't, then you have a problem.